Emily wiped her forehead, her fingers trembling slightly as she gripped the damp cloth. The scent of bleach still lingered in the air, blending with traces of expensive perfume that clung to every corner of the lavish hotel suite. She had worked here for over 2 years, quietly cleaning the grand rooms of guests who never seemed to notice her presence. They passed by her as if she were invisible, just another part of the decor, no different from the cold marble floors or the glittering crystal chandeliers that hung above the grand lobby. That day had begun like any other. Emily had entered the suite belonging to James Wilson, a renowned billionaire she had only ever glimpsed from afar. James was famously private, always surrounded by a team of assistants, rarely spending more than a few minutes in his room. Her job was to clean meticulously, ensuring no trace of her presence remained before anyone even noticed she had been there. But today, something was different. While dusting the nightstand, a faint sound echoed from the adjoining room. At first, she paid it no mind, but the voices grew clearer, sharper, a woman's voice, cold and threatening. Emily froze, the cloth slipping from her hand as she strained to listen. "Ryan, we have to be careful. One mistake, and everything will fall apart. This trip, it will be his last." Her heart raced. She knew that voice. It was Amanda Wilson, James's wife, but her tone was nothing like a loving spouse. She sounded calculating, dangerous. A deep male voice responded, equally chilling. "I know. We can't let him get away. His next business trip will be the last." A sickening realization settled over Emily. They were planning to murder James Wilson. She backed away from the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought they might hear it. Fear surged through her veins. What should she do? Call the police? But who would believe her? She was just a maid, a nobody in this glittering world of wealth and power. That evening, as she sat alone in the cramped employee break room, Emily stared at her cold cup of coffee, replaying the chilling conversation over and over in her mind. If she did nothing, James would be killed. But if she spoke up, who would believe her? And worse, what if they came after her next? The next morning, James Wilson appeared in the hotel lobby, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, exuding authority and grace. He seemed untouchable. The contrast between his world and hers felt painfully stark. Yet, she knew she had to warn him. Summoning every ounce of courage, Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. "Mr. Wilson," James turned, frowning in confusion. "Do I know you? Please, I need to speak with you. Don't go on your next trip. There's something serious. I can't explain everything, but you must believe me. You're in danger." His brows furrowed with suspicion. "And why should I trust you?" Emily hesitated, unsure how to convey the gravity of what she had overheard. "I can't explain it all. Just trust me, please." James studied her for a long moment before offering a reluctant nod. "I'll think about it." But Emily's unease remained. She barely slept that night, haunted by the fear that James might ignore her warning. The following morning, as she left her modest apartment, a sleek black car was parked at the curb. A driver in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out and approached her with an air of quiet professionalism. "Miss Emily, this is for you." He handed her a pristine white envelope. Inside was a note. "Thank you. I've canceled my trip. This is a token of my gratitude. J.W." Alongside the note was a small key, engraved with the words, "Wilshire Towers." Her phone buzzed with a message. "Your new apartment is ready. Welcome to a new beginning. J.W." Emily stood frozen, the key trembling in her hand. Why was James doing this? She had only warned him, nothing more. But why such an extravagant gift? What was he really trying to say? And yet, as she gripped the key, a profound truth settled over her. Her life would never be the same again. The sun had just begun to set as Emily walked along the stone-paved sidewalks of New York, heading toward Wilshire Towers. The key resting in her pocket felt heavier than it should have. More than just a token of a new home, it was a symbol of the strange, bewildering events that had unfolded in recent days. James Wilson, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the world, had given her a luxury apartment after a brief warning about a dangerous trip. Why? Why would a man like him do that? Wilshire Towers came into view, towering with elegance, its glass facade reflecting the last golden light of the day. The sheer grandeur of the building was overwhelming as she stopped before the massive entrance. A uniformed doorman, impeccably dressed, greeted her with a professional smile, only making her feel more out of place. "Good evening, miss. May I assist you?" Emily swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady as she pulled the key from her pocket, her hand trembling slightly. I have an apartment here, Unit 1504. The doorman took the key, scanned it briefly, and nodded with the same polished courtesy. "Everything is ready for you. The elevator on your right, 15th floor. Have a pleasant evening, Miss Emily." Murmuring a quiet thank you, Emily stepped into the elevator. The sleek metal doors slid shut with a gentle hum, and the cabin began to ascend. Her heart pounded louder with each illuminated number on the panel. The sensation was surreal, as if she were living someone else's life. 15th floor. The doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a long, silent hallway. Emily walked hesitantly toward the door marked 1504, her fingers trembling as she fitted the key into the lock. A soft click. The door swung open, and what she saw took her breath away. The apartment was stunning, almost unreal. Gleaming hardwood floors stretched beneath her feet, while recessed ceiling lights cast a warm, inviting glow over the expansive space. Every piece of furniture was meticulously chosen. A plush leather sofa, delicate silk curtains framing floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of New York's skyline. The modern kitchen, with its stainless steel appliances and pristine marble countertops, looked untouched, as though it belonged in the pages of a luxury design magazine. Emily brushed her fingers over the cool surface of the kitchen counter, the reality of it all pressing down on her like a weight. Why was she here? Just days ago, she was scrubbing floors, worrying about making rent for her tiny, dimly lit apartment. And now, all this, because she warned James? It was too much. It felt wrong. Sinking onto the edge of the sofa, her thoughts spiraled. What does James expect from me? Do I owe him something in return? The note in the envelope had only said, "A new beginning." But could it really be that simple? A sudden knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. Her heart raced as she stood, pulse echoing in her ears. When she opened it, a young man stood before her. He was dressed in a sharp but understated suit, holding a clipboard and wearing a friendly smile. "Miss Emily?" he asked politely. "I'm Evan, Mr. Wilson's assistant. I've been asked to give you a brief tour of the building's amenities." Emily nodded, still dazed. Evan guided her through the opulent features of Wilshire Towers, an ultra-modern gym equipped with state-of-the-art machines, a heated indoor pool, a private residence lounge with floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything felt excessive, far beyond anything she had ever imagined for herself. When they returned to the apartment, Evan handed her a crisp business card. "If you need anything at all, Miss Emily, please don't hesitate to call. Mr. Wilson wants to ensure you're comfortable here. Have a pleasant evening." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Emily alone in the overwhelming silence of the apartment. The quiet was suffocating, pressing down on her chest like an invisible weight. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring out at the glittering city lights beyond the window. What was she supposed to do now? James had to be expecting something. He couldn't have given her all this out of pure gratitude, could he? And what about what she heard at the hotel? Amanda, Ryan, that whispered conversation plotting James's death. The next morning, the sharp ring of her phone startled her awake. She reached for it, squinting at the unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. "Hello?" Her voice was groggy, still thick with sleep. "Miss Emily, this is Detective Martinez from NYPD. We need you to come down to the station to discuss a matter involving Mr. James Wilson. It's urgent." Her blood turned cold. "James? Is he? What happened? Is he okay?" There was a long pause. "I'll explain when you get here. Please come as soon as possible." The line went dead, leaving Emily frozen, the phone still pressed against her ear. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She hurriedly dressed, her heart pounding harder with every passing second. Was this connected to the warning she had given James? Had something happened despite his canceled trip? As she stepped into the police station, the harsh fluorescent lights and the scent of burnt coffee mixed with old paper engulfed her senses. A uniformed officer at the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Detective Martinez." "About Mr. Wilson." The officer nodded, gesturing toward a door at the far end of the station. Second office on the right. Emily's footsteps felt heavier with each step as she approached the door. What had happened to James, and what awaited her on the other side? Your father's death was not an accident. James's words echoed in Emily's mind, leaving her shaken to the core. For years, she had believed her father had died in a tragic accident, a painful event she could not change. Yet now, James was telling her it wasn't just an accident. It was part of a dark conspiracy involving power, deceit, and betrayal spanning many years. James sat across from her, his expression serious yet filled with empathy. "I'm not sure I've gathered enough proof yet," he said softly, his voice laced with regret. "But what I've uncovered suggests that your father was not just a random victim. He was framed, drawn into a crime he never committed, and I believe Amanda's family was involved." Emily froze, her entire body trembling. She shook her head, struggling to process his words. You mean it was deliberate? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Her voice was fragile, barely above a whisper. James lowered his head, his face heavy with guilt. "I needed more evidence, Emily. I didn't want to pull you into this unless I was certain. But now, with Amanda threatening you, I can't stay silent anymore." James's words cut deep, piercing her mind like blades. Her father's death, not an accident. A carefully orchestrated conspiracy. Amanda's family was involved. The thoughts overwhelmed her, yet deep down, they made sense. Pieces she hadn't noticed before were now falling into place. Pain and anger welled up inside her chest. "What do we do now?" she whispered, her eyes filled with determination. "How do we prove the truth?" James held her gaze, his voice steady but grave. "We need more evidence, enough to expose Amanda and her entire network. But it will be dangerous. She's not just cunning. She has people willing to do anything to protect her." Emily clenched her fists, fear still lingering. But the pain of losing her father and the shocking truth had ignited a fire within her. "I won't run. If Amanda was responsible for my father's death, I need to know the truth. I need her to pay for what she's done." James nodded, his eyes reflecting both respect and concern. "We'll get justice, Emily, but we have to be cautious. Amanda has played this game for years. One wrong move, and she'll cover her tracks again." The days that followed felt like a blur. Emily found it impossible to focus on her housekeeping duties. Clean sheets, polished floors, and spotless towels all seemed meaningless now. Her mind was consumed by James's revelation, by her father's death, by the web of deceit entangling her life. James had kept his distance, only sending brief updates. He was working with Detective Martinez, a trusted officer known for his integrity, to build a case against Amanda. But progress was slow. Amanda's family was powerful, and their crimes had been buried beneath layers of manipulation for years. Then, late one evening, as the city lights flickered through the windows of her luxury apartment, a sudden knock on the door startled Emily. Her heart pounded, fear clutching her chest. Had Amanda discovered her involvement? When she opened the door, Detective Martinez stood there, his expression grave yet sympathetic. "We've uncovered new information about your father," Martinez said, placing a thick folder on the table. "I know this will be difficult, but you deserve to know the truth." Taking a shaky breath, Emily opened the file. Inside were old photographs, police reports, and financial documents. Martinez's voice was calm but heavy as he explained the findings. "Your father, Thomas, was an honest man, but he discovered fraudulent activities within Amanda's father's company. When he tried to speak out, they framed him. Charges of embezzlement, falsified documents. It was all staged to silence him permanently." Emily felt her chest tighten, the pain overwhelming. Her father had died trying to do the right thing, and he had paid the ultimate price for it. Why was I never told this?" she choked out, tears welling in her eyes. Martinez sighed. They covered their tracks too well. After his death, all evidence was erased. You and your mother were pushed aside as if he had never existed. We've only recently begun piecing it together. But the truth was even more painful when Martinez added, "You are the rightful heir to part of the estate your father left behind." However, Amanda's father seized it illegally and has hidden this for years. Emily's breath caught. Not only had she lost her father, but her entire legacy had been stolen, and Amanda was still trying to keep it buried, even willing to kill to protect the secret. Stop her, Emily whispered, her voice fierce, tears streaming down her face. At any cost. James's words echoed in her mind as she processed the revelation. We need to confront Ryan. He's the key. Ryan, Amanda's longtime ally, had always been loyal to her. Or rather, loyal to her wealth. But James believed he could be persuaded. His loyalty is to money, not her, James had said. If we can convince him that speaking out is his best option, he might reveal the truth. Emily felt a flicker of hope. It was risky, but perhaps their only chance. If they could turn Ryan, they could expose Amanda completely. But how do we reach him? Emily had asked. James had a plan. I've been watching him. He frequents a small bar downtown, away from Amanda's usual crowd. I believe he goes there to escape the pressure. Though the thought of confronting Ryan terrified her, Emily knew it had to be done. We have to act fast. Amanda knows I'm involved. She called me 2 days ago. Threatened me. James's face had darkened. She called you? What did she say? Emily had whispered, her voice trembling. She said I had made a mistake. That people like me shouldn't interfere with people like her. She sounded completely in control, like nothing could touch her. James had clenched his jaw, his voice filled with quiet rage. She won't get away with this, I promise you. That night, the plan was set. They would confront Ryan at the bar. The neon lights flickered dimly over the worn-out sign of the bar as rain drizzled on the cracked pavement. The old, rundown place felt miles away from the glamorous world Amanda inhabited. Tonight, it felt like the center of the universe for Emily. Ready? James asked, his voice low, tense. Emily nodded, her heart hammering against her chest. More than ever, they stepped inside. The scent of stale beer and smoke lingered in the air. Muted conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the hum of old music drifted around them. In the corner, exactly as James predicted, sat Ryan. He looked troubled, swirling a glass of whiskey, eyes fixed on the counter as though lost in thought. James approached first, calm but assertive. Ryan, we need to talk. Ryan flinched, his eyes narrowing. He looked ready to leave, but James took the stool next to him, cutting off his exit. What's this about? Ryan's voice was rough, defensive. Emily stepped closer, her voice trembling but firm. It's about Amanda. We know everything. Ryan paled, his hand tightening around the glass. Silence stretched uncomfortably before James continued. You're in deep, Ryan, but it doesn't have to end badly for you. Help us, and we can protect you, but you have to help us take her down. Ryan looked around, clearly torn. Loyalty? No. Fear. You don't know what she's capable of, he whispered, voice cracking. Emily leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I do. She killed my father, and if you stay silent, you'll be next. The tension hung thick in the air before Ryan finally exhaled shakily. Okay, I'll tell you everything. And with those words, the truth began to unravel. Your father's death was not an accident. James's words echoed relentlessly in Emily's mind, leaving her overwhelmed. For years, she had believed her father had died in a tragic accident, a painful event she could never change. But now, James was telling her that it wasn't just a random tragedy. His death was part of a dark conspiracy intertwined with power, deceit, and betrayal, buried for years. James sat across from her, his expression serious, filled with both empathy and regret. I'm not sure I have enough evidence yet, he said softly, voice tinged with apology. But what I've uncovered suggests your father wasn't just a random victim. He was framed, pushed into a crime he never committed. And I believe Amanda's family was involved. Emily froze, her entire body trembling. She shook her head, trying to reject the weight of his words. You? What do you mean? Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Her voice wavered, barely above a whisper. James lowered his gaze, his expression heavy with guilt. I needed more proof. Emily, I didn't want to drag you into this until I was certain. But now, with Amanda threatening you, I can't stay silent any longer. His words cut deep, like blades twisting through her mind. Her father's death, not an accident, a deliberate plan. Amanda's family involved. It all felt too much to bear, too surreal. Yet deep down, the puzzle pieces seemed to fit. Pain mixed with anger surged through her chest, a fire igniting where fear had once settled. What do we do now? She whispered, her voice filled with quiet determination. How do we prove it? James met her gaze with unwavering resolve. We need more evidence, enough to expose Amanda and everyone connected to her. But it will be dangerous. willing to do anything to protect her secrets. Emily clenched her fists, the fear still lingering but now overshadowed by the raw pain of loss and betrayal. I'm not running. If Amanda was truly behind my father's death, I need to know the truth, and she needs to pay for what she's done. James nodded, his eyes reflecting admiration for her strength. We'll make this right, Emily, but we must be careful. Amanda has been playing this game for years. One mistake, and she'll bury the truth again. The days that followed were a blur. Emily couldn't focus on her job anymore. Crisp linens, polished floors, neatly folded towels. All the tasks that once filled her days felt meaningless. Her mind was consumed by James's words, her father's death, and the web of lies that had quietly suffocated her life for so long. James kept his distance for a while, sending only short updates through text. He had begun working with Detective Martinez, a well-respected officer known for his integrity, to build a case against Amanda. But it wasn't easy. Amanda's family held significant influence, and they had concealed their crimes far too well. Then, one late evening, as the city lights shimmered faintly through the tall windows of her luxury apartment, a sudden knock echoed through the silent space. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, fear tightening her throat. Had Amanda discovered what they were doing? Was someone sent to silence her? Cautiously, she opened the door. Detective Martinez stood there, his face grave but compassionate. We've uncovered more information about your father, Martinez said, placing a thick folder on the table. I know this will be difficult, but you deserve the truth. Emily drew a shaky breath, forcing herself to remain calm as she opened the file. Inside were faded photographs, old police reports, and a stack of complex financial documents. Martinez's voice remained steady as he walked her through the evidence. Your father, Thomas, was a hardworking, honest man, but he uncovered fraudulent activity within Amanda's father's company. When he decided to speak out, they set him up. False charges of embezzlement, forged documents. It was all orchestrated to silence him forever. Emily felt her chest tighten, the weight of betrayal crushing her. Her father had tried to do the right thing and paid for it with his life. Why was I never told this? She whispered, her voice breaking. Martinez sighed, his expression heavy. They covered their tracks too well. After his death, all evidence was erased. You and your mother were pushed aside, as if he had never existed. It has taken us years to trace these fragments, but the truth cut even deeper when Martinez added, we've also discovered that you are the rightful heir to a portion of the estate your father left behind. But Amanda's father illegally seized it. He has concealed this truth for years. Emily's hands trembled as tears spilled down her cheeks. Not only had she lost her father, but her entire legacy had been stolen from her. And now Amanda was still determined to keep it all buried, at any cost. We have to stop her, Emily whispered, voice trembling with both grief and defiance, no matter what it takes. Heart shatter. Her father had tried to do the right thing, and he had paid the ultimate price for it, with his life. Why didn't anyone tell me this? She choked, her voice barely above a whisper. Detective Martinez exhaled deeply, his face heavy with empathy. They covered everything too well. After your father passed, all evidence was wiped clean. You and your mother were pushed to the sidelines as if he had never existed. We've struggled to piece this together for years. But the truth was even more painful when Martinez added, we also discovered that you are the rightful heir to a portion of the estate your father left behind. However, Amanda's father illegally seized it and has hidden the truth for years. Emily froze, tears welling uncontrollably in her eyes. Not only had she lost her father, but everything her family once owned had been stolen. And now Amanda was still trying to keep it buried, willing to kill to protect her secret. We have to stop her, Emily whispered, her voice trembling yet filled with fierce determination, at any cost. Emily's mind spun as James's words echoed louder in her thoughts. She couldn't stop thinking about what had just been revealed. His warning stirred countless questions, confusion, and fear. If Ryan was part of the conspiracy, could he be convinced to turn against Amanda? Ryan, the man who had always seemed loyal to Amanda, or at least loyal to her wealth, could be the key to uncovering the whole truth. James nodded, his expression both thoughtful and determined. I've considered that too. Ryan's loyalty to Amanda is questionable. He's there for the money, not for any genuine loyalty. If If we can convince him that switching sides is his best option, he might be willing to talk. A spark of hope ignited in Emily's chest. It was risky, but it was the only shot they had. If they could break Ryan's silence, Amanda's entire facade could crumble. But how do we approach him? Emily asked, her voice trembling with both fear and urgency. James leaned back slightly, thoughtful. I've been keeping an eye on him. He frequents a small bar downtown. It's low profile, far from the glamorous places Amanda usually goes. I suspect he visits to escape the scrutiny of their circle. Emily's pulse quickened at the thought of facing Ryan in person. Fear clawed at her chest, but she knew this confrontation was inevitable. If they could sway him, everything could change. We have to act quickly, she insisted, her voice growing more determined. Amanda already knows about me. She called me 2 days ago. She threatened me. James's eyes widened with alarm. She called you. What exactly did she say? Emily's voice shook slightly as she recalled the conversation. She said I'd made a grave mistake, that people like me shouldn't meddle with people like her. She sounded so calm, so untouchable. James's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with anger. She won't get away with this. We'll make sure of it. Emily nodded, the fire inside her growing stronger than ever. They had to act before Amanda tightened her grip any further. That evening, they made a plan. They would confront Ryan at the bar James had mentioned. The night air was cool but heavy with tension. Emily stood outside the dimly lit bar, heart pounding, as neon lights flickered faintly above a worn-out sign. The rain from earlier had left the cracked pavement glistening under the glow, making the setting feel old and forgotten. So unlike Amanda's luxurious world, but tonight this bar felt like the center of everything. Are you ready? James asked quietly, his voice steady but tense. Emily swallowed hard but nodded, more than ever. They stepped inside. The bar was small, filled with the scent of stale beer and lingering cigarette smoke. Conversations hummed softly beneath the scratchy music playing from an old speaker in the corner. The low light cast shadows across the faces of the few patrons scattered along the bar. And there, just as James had predicted, sat Ryan. He was slouched at the far end of the counter, a glass of whiskey in front of him, his eyes distant as he stared into his drink. The dim lighting emphasized the tension on his face. He seemed lost, burdened. Emily's pulse raced faster. Was he already anticipating their arrival? Would he run? James was the first to move. He approached the bar calmly, voice low but firm. Ryan, we need to talk. Ryan flinched, his eyes snapping up to meet James's. There was surprise, then suspicion. His body shifted as if preparing to leave, but James quickly settled onto the stool beside him, cutting off his exit. What's this about? Ryan muttered, voice hoarse and defensive. Emily took a cautious step closer, her voice steady but unwavering. It's about Amanda. We know everything. Ryan's eyes narrowed. His posture stiffened, the glass he held trembling slightly. He remained silent, as though calculating how much they truly knew. James pressed on, voice calm but commanding. You're in deep, Ryan. But it doesn't have to end badly for you. Work with us, and we can protect you. But you have to help us bring Amanda down. Ryan scanned the room nervously, visibly torn. Emily saw the crack in his resolve, the hesitation, the fear. His loyalty was never genuine. It was fear and greed keeping him close to Amanda. You don't understand what she's capable of, Ryan whispered, his voice laced with tension. Emily leaned in closer, voice soft yet piercing. I know exactly what she's capable of. She killed my father. She'll do anything to protect herself. But, Ryan, if you don't help us stop her, she'll destroy you too. It's only a matter of time. A heavy silence lingered. Finally, with a long, defeated sigh, Ryan's shoulders slumped. His gaze dropped to the worn countertop. All right, I'll tell you what you need to know. Relief washed over Emily and James as Ryan began to speak. His voice hushed, but the words spilling out in a cascade of long-hidden truths. He revealed the truth behind Amanda's schemes, the falsified financial records, the bribes, the cover-ups, the evidence she had buried over the years. Everything she doesn't want exposed is hidden in a safe at her family's estate. Emily exchanged a glance with James. This was it, their chance to finally expose Amanda. But they both knew breaking into Amanda's estate would be dangerous. No margin for error, and yet they had no choice. James and Emily had successfully convinced Ryan to reveal the truth about Amanda's crimes. But as they attempted to leave the estate with the incriminating files, Amanda blocked their path, dragging Ryan into a dangerous standoff. James stood protectively beside Emily, his body tense, eyes darting between Ryan and Amanda, analyzing every possible outcome. He knew this was more than just a confrontation. It was a fight for survival. "Ryan, you don't have to do this," James said, his voice calm but firm. "You can walk away from all this. We can protect you." Ryan hesitated. His eyes flicked toward Amanda, uncertainty evident in his face. Emily noticed the doubt. She could see it, the conflict, the hesitation. Deep down, she knew Ryan wasn't a killer. He was a pawn, trapped in Amanda's web of manipulation. But Amanda, noticing his faltering resolve, stepped forward. Her voice turned cold, venomous. "Ryan, if you don't handle this, I will. And trust me, if I do, it will be far messier." Ryan's fingers clenched around the gun, his jaw tightening. Emily's pulse raced. She had to defuse the situation quickly. "Ryan," she spoke softly, raising her hands in a gesture of peace, taking a cautious step forward. "You don't have to do this. She's using you. If you pull that trigger, you'll be trapped under her control forever. But if you help us, we can free you. We can protect you." Silence fell over the room. Emily could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Ryan's eyes flicked between Emily and Amanda, torn between fear and the faint hope Emily was offering. Amanda saw the hesitation too. She moved closer, her voice turning into a soft but menacing whisper. "Ryan, don't be stupid. You know what I'm capable of if you cross me." Ryan's hand trembled, his grip on the gun faltering. Emily held her breath, silently praying. She could see it, his internal struggle, the war raging inside him between fear and guilt. Suddenly, Ryan lowered the gun. I'm sorry," he whispered, voice heavy with regret. Amanda's face twisted in fury. Her eyes burned with rage as she hissed, "Coward." She lunged toward Ryan, but James was faster. He grabbed Amanda's wrist, twisting it behind her back in a controlled yet forceful hold. Amanda let out a sharp cry of pain, struggling against him, but James held firm. "Ryan, pick up the gun," James ordered. Ryan hesitated for a heartbeat, but then bent down, gripping the gun tightly, this time pointing it directly at Amanda. Emily exhaled, her chest heaving. They had control. They finally had Amanda subdued. The files were in their possession. This was it. The nightmare was finally ending. But Emily knew this wasn't just about stopping Amanda. This was about justice for her father. The truth. Amanda writhed in James's grasp, her face twisted with anger and desperation. "You think you've won? Don't be so naive. James, you're just pawns in my game." James's grip tightened, his voice calm but unwavering. "The game's over. Amanda, we have the evidence. You'll pay for what you've done." But Amanda's lips curled into a chilling smile. "You really think a few pieces of paper will bring me down? I've planned for this." Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. More of Amanda's people were coming. Ryan tensed. "We need to leave now." James nodded, pulling Amanda toward the door. But Emily knew better. They couldn't just run. Not yet. Having the files wasn't enough. They needed to get out alive and ensure the evidence reached the police. The footsteps grew louder. Amanda let out a cold, twisted laugh. "You're all going to die here." Emily inhaled deeply, centering herself. "No, Amanda, not this time. This time, you lose." Beyond the hallway, flashlights danced, figures emerging from the shadows, armed. James tightened his grip on Emily's hand, his voice steady with quiet determination. "We won't lose. Let's go." James had steadied himself, his gaze unwavering as he clutched the evidence-filled briefcase tightly. These files were the only proof that could bring Amanda to justice. He held them firmly, as if he never intended to let go. "You're not getting these." James's voice was calm but resolute, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily on his chest. The man facing them cocked his gun with a cold metallic click that echoed through the silent space. Emily flinched at the sound, feeling her heartbeat thunder in her chest as her breath caught in her throat. "I won't ask again. Hand them over." The man's voice was icy, threatening. The room felt frozen in time, suffocating with tension. James and Emily stood their ground while danger loomed closer with every passing second. Suddenly, breaking the unbearable silence, a voice echoed from the shadows. "Drop your weapons!" Emily's head snapped around, her heart leaping into her throat. Emerging from the darkness was Martinez, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, a team of officers in full tactical gear stepped forward, weapons drawn, aimed squarely at those threatening James and Emily. Relief flooded through Emily. Though the danger hadn't completely passed, Amanda stood frozen in the middle, her face twisted with fury and disbelief, a smug sneer still lingering on her lips. Martinez stepped closer, her commanding voice unwavering as she addressed Amanda. "It's over. You're finished, Amanda." For the first time, Amanda's smirk faltered, just for a heartbeat, but long enough for Emily to see the cracks in her confidence. The officers moved swiftly, disarming Amanda's remaining guards. Ryan, trembling, quietly lowered his weapon, the regret etched deeply across his face. Amanda, however, didn't resist. Not at first, but her glare burned with pure rage as Martinez clicked the cuffs onto her wrists with a sharp, decisive snap. "You'll pay for every crime you've committed," Martinez said coldly. Amanda's face twisted further, her eyes wild with fury, but she remained silent. Her once loyal men were led away in handcuffs, their faces pale with the sting of failure and disgrace. Emily stood motionless, almost numb as she watched it all unfold. Finally, it was over. The lies, the threats, the fear that had haunted them for so long finally ended. Yet instead of the overwhelming relief she had expected, there was only emptiness inside her. James, sensing her turmoil, gently placed a hand on her shoulder. His warmth anchored her, pulling her back to the present. "You did it, Emily. It's over," he whispered, his voice soft but powerful. She nodded weakly, but the reality of what they had endured hadn't fully sunk in. She had fought for her father, for the truth, and now justice had prevailed. Yet the void in her heart remained. Martinez approached, her voice gentler now. "You were brave, Emily. Your father would be proud of you." Those words struck something deep within her. A fresh wave of emotion surged as tears welled in her eyes. Not just sadness, but relief. Justice had been served. Amanda would finally face the consequences. Her crimes, her web of deceit, everything would be exposed to the world. Yet, as Emily gazed out the warehouse window at the silent city lights, a lingering question echoed in her mind. What now? The battle was over, but what came next? For the first time in so long, there was nothing left to fight. And now, it was time for her and James to move forward, stronger together, having faced the darkness and won. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Remember, truth and justice will always prevail, no matter the obstacles.